Hi, my name is Paul Plucker. I'm sitting here with Rocky Bleier. We are two childhood kids from Appleton, Wisconsin, and we grew up. I was on the west side of Appleton. He was on the east side of Appleton.
That's right.
And I got to know him through his brother Dan, who I used to play sandlot sports with. I had a buddy by the name of Chuck Olson. He had a friend by the name of Mark Catlin, and we ran into each other and we started playing sandlot sports together. I went to a public school. Rocky was in a Catholic school.
That's right.
And he went to a Catholic high school. He's a little bit older than I am, so he was in high school. I was just in junior high. But he went to a high school by the name of Xavier, and he involved in a lot of sports. He was involved in football, basketball, track, and I know he was team captains of a bunch of these.
Right.
And I'm not sure who he paid off, but anyway, so this is Rocky Bleier, a friend of mine.
That's right. Paul, it's great to be here. And thanks, and especially our background of course, being from Wisconsin and from Appleton specifically. And it was you look back in your life and there are times when you go, hey, it was a great time of our lives, growing up during that period. And playing sports, playing pickup games. They didn't have organized teams as they do today. There was no Pop Warner back then, or Little League. So you played from neighborhood kids, or you got into the rec league. That was probably the best, the recreation. So you put your own team together, and so the neighborhood kids, we'd have our own team, both basketball and football. I can remember we put our grade school kind of rec team together, and we had to go out and buy our own uniforms. So we went down to Pond's Sporting Shop, which is the only place in Appleton. And we put our orders in. It cost us $15 each for uniforms, satin uniforms that we wore in the rec league, and I still remember that. But that was it. And the great thing about, and I think part of that, the great thing about playing at that period of time, or in sports, or being involved, is that there were no adults. You have to make up the rules and how you're going to play, and decide who's going to play and who's going to play on what team, and so on. So you'd get 5 or 6 guys, and you have to split them up, and you get to pick teams. So obviously the 2 guys that organized it would be the quote captains. And so you'd throw the bat if we're playing baseball. Remember, you grip over grip over grip over grip, and you could get maybe the 2 fingers or the 1 finger for the last, and you'd win. Okay, fine, and you get the first pick,
right.
And you get the first pick, and so the top guy that you'd pick. And one of the things is that there was always the last guy. There's always the last guy somewhere, that got picked.
Going to right field.
And then somewhat, and I think about this, and I said, somewhat like today, there is no last guy. Everybody gets a chance to play, everybody gets a trophy, but there's a learning curve in saying, I'm the last guy. I might not be that good, but at least I'm playing, or whatever it is. And then you made up your own rules, whatever they may be. So anyway, that was the era that we had grown up in. And you had mentioned Xavier High School. So obviously us baby boomers were coming of age, and so because of it, we were coming of age, schools had to be built to take care of the population growth of baby boomers. And so we got our, in 1958, and I can remember I was in grade school at St. Joe's Catholic grade school. I was in the 7th grade, and there was a vote on what we're going to name the high school. So they had all these names, and it came down to the kids, and you got a chance to vote on it, whatever it was. And so in 8th grade, and so it was just being built in 8th grade. It was called Xavier. That was the name of the school, and it started off as a 2-year school. So there were freshmen and sophomores, and then my freshman year was only 3 years, and then my sophomore year, we became a full-fledged high school within the conference, and so the whole new conference was developed for that region. Schools in Oshkosh, St. Mary's Menasha was a Catholic school, Green Bay De Pere, and so Fond du Lac, and all these schools started, and we had our own conference, and we got a chance to play. Now, interesting, we were the brand new school in this whole region of Appleton. It took in all these little towns. The only other Catholic school was St. Mary's, which was an old school, an older school that had been around for, and that's usually where most of the Catholic kids would go. But now we got a brand new school. So we got all these guys coming from Menasha or Neenah or Little Chute or Kaukauna, and they all came to the new high school. And because of that, we had some great athletes and developed into some great teams. And in those years that I was there, and the 4 years that I was in high school, in all honesty, we were 95 and 5, or 94 and 6 in both football and basketball. Never lost a football game. Lost 2 basketball games, 2 basketball games prior to, or 3 basketball games. Well, actually, then we were in the playoffs. We lost, and then my junior year we won, and we were state champions, and we were undefeated until my senior year, and we lost the state championship my senior year. So I had this plethora of guys. But anyway, we had good athletes, and you're just part of a team and part of a success and so on. And because of that success, a guy by the name of Torchy Clark, who was a wonderful coach at the time, got the most out of his players in all these sports. So I get a chance to continue my education, and I get to go to the University of Notre Dame. And the success that we had there wasn't, sometimes I wonder, and you end up at the right place at the right time. And I go to Notre Dame. Why? Because my mother wanted me to go to Notre Dame, and so you end up going, oh, okay, Mom. And then the interesting thing is rule changes and how they make a difference. So in 1964, the NCAA changed the substitution rule in the game of football. Prior to 1964, you could only substitute 3 players at the change of the ball. So people had to play both ways. So when you were recruiting in college at the time, people had to play both ways. A center, a nose tackle, maybe a fullback was a linebacker, et cetera, et cetera. And all of a sudden it changes, and now you could start moving athletes into different positions, in which Ara Parseghian did, turned the program around, lost, I think he went 9-1 that first year, and then by my junior year, we win a national championship, and I become captain of the team my senior year. But because of that success, is that, I get drafted in the NFL, or you get recognized for your contribution. And so that's what gets me here to Pittsburgh. I was a highly touted 417th pick in the NFL draft during that period of time, and I was a 16th round draft choice. But you came here, and we get a brand new coach, in 1969. Chuck Knoll comes in, and all of a sudden it starts to change. But also, one of the things that we had going for us, obviously, if you look around this room, is the Green Bay Packers. And so the Green Bay Packers were a big part of our lives because they were starting to win. And more importantly, not so much that they were starting to win, but the exposure because of television all of a sudden became greater. Now we got homes that get more information, you get news that is coming on, and you got Packer games that you could watch and be a part of. And so those teams, and when I was in high school and watching the Packers, I obviously start to win, and then through college into the 60s, it was really it was a great experience to have gone through. And I saw over here the picture that you have on these walls, and of the ice bowl. And I had gone to the ice bowl with my dad, and was my senior year at Notre Dame after our season, and I had torn a ligament in the second to last game of that season, so I was in a cast. So I was at home for the holidays, and Dad said, "Hey, let's go to the Packer game." Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, I go. It was 15 below, for those of you who may not remember that at the time. So I had a removable cast, so I took my cast off. I wrapped it up with bandages or elastic bands to keep it tight. And unlike today, with the kind of clothes that we wore, we didn't have those kind of clothes. It was layered clothes. So long johns went on, hunting pants went on, another pair of slacks went over that, and you just built yourself up. And so here we are, we get to the game. And I'm on crutches because of the operation I had because of my knee. So we find our seats. Now, I should say this for those who are listening, is that they don't have seats at Lambeau Field.
That's correct.
They got benches. It's all benches, and they're marked like this. So everybody's got their clothes on, and they got their winter clothes on, and they're packed in. So we're packed in, and I finally got to my seat. We had our crutches down in front of us, and we got to my seat, and it was 1:45, and the game started at 1 o'clock. At 1 o'clock, I wanted to leave. That's how cold it was. I'm sitting there. So we watched the whole game. We see the game go back and forth. And for those who have never seen it, you get to get it on YouTube or whatever it is. And so you watch it, and it comes down. So it comes down to the last play I see. They had a running back in there by the name of Chuck Mercine. And Chuck catches one on a flare coming out of the backfield and takes it out at the 50-yard line or so, right before the 2-minute warning. So we're sitting here watching what takes place. They're still on the 50, and Dad said, "I think we should go because you're on crutches. Why wait to the end of the game? We'd be caught in the traffic." And I'm going, "Okay, be fine. Let's go." So we get out, I get in, so we're on the crutches, we walk out of Lambeau Field, we're in the parking lot, and we're going, and all of a sudden, you hear this roar take place. Oh, so we get to the car, and the lock's frozen. We can't even get into the car. So I could see my dad, he's bending down, he's breathing on the lock, trying to thaw out to get the key in. So we finally get in the car and to turn the radio on to be able to and we missed everything that had taken place. And so that was my experience. But also, one of the things, and I use the Packers in this regards, because ultimately, as we talk about this, and the transition later coming into the Steelers, it was signing of the same experience. Now, I grew up in a bar business. My dad owned a bar in Appleton, Wisconsin. And so he had patrons that would come. So when the Packers, I should say, started to win, and they were winning championships and then going into the first Super Bowls, everybody would talk. That was my first experience that people talked about ball players or talked about their favorite players. Or I would go to my friend's house, like in high school, and they would wear green and gold. And then they talk about their favorite player, and then go to tailgates, whatever tailgates were at that time. They would talk about going to the games, and so that was all new kind of exposure for us who grew up at that period of time. And so it's really quite interesting. And just to add as an aside, as I'm sitting at one of the Packer games, this was earlier. It was earlier. I mean, that was my last one my senior year. But anyway, this was earlier. And I thought to myself, oh, it was right after our national championship. It was right after my junior year and after that season. And I was up and we went to a Packer game. And they happened to be playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. It just happened to be, and I remember that because I was looking at the program, and in the program, I was trying to find out if there was anybody my size that was playing on either one of these two teams. And so I puffed my statistics up a little bit just to make sure I could fit into the realm, and all of a sudden, Jim Cannonball Butler played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, running back, 5'10", 190 pounds. One thing I knew that I didn't know at the time, the difference between my 5'10" and 190 pounds and his 5'10" and 190 pounds was that he was fast. He had speed. One thing I did not possess. Anyway, but that was my first thought about possibly playing in the NFL. Could it happen, and so on. And then fast forward, as we were talking about it, and I get drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then I come to Pittsburgh. Obviously, everybody knows the story there. Chuck Noll comes in, his first season in 1969. I'm in the service at the time, but he goes 1-13. But they start to build, and they build, and they build, and they build, and then by 1972, first time in the history of the franchise, do we get into the playoffs, and it boils down to, as we will talk about, one play that changes the course and direction of that team, and that play goes down in the annals as one of the all-time great comebacks, affectionately known in Steeler lore as the Immaculate Reception 50 years ago, and how that turned the tide. Because it got us into a playoff. It just turned the tide. It was like, finally, not the same old Steelers, but now we got hope. And we're starting to win, and just be a part of that team. And by 1974, we build and we go for the first time, and we win a championship, and we go into the Super Bowl, and then we win 3 more Super Bowls thereafter. But it was interesting to experience what I experienced from a Packer point of view, and how fans loved their Packers back then, and how they put them on a pedestal. And everybody had a story about one of their favorite players or whatever it was that had taken place. Now to actually live that and become part of one of those favorite players just because of what a team had accomplished, and being a part of that team and changing the lore of a team that has lost for 40 years and becoming part of a championship and changing the course and direction of Pittsburgh, specifically of that football club, but how people perceived Pittsburgh, because it was really, nobody knew about Pittsburgh. It was like a diamond in the rough. Maybe more of a rough than a diamond, but it was all of a sudden started to change. The powers to be started to clean up the city, clean up the rivers. During the early part of the 70s, all the pictures that one saw beforehand of all the smoke and the steel mills that had taken place, and in the afternoon, the sun hardly got through the clouds and so on. And now all of a sudden, it started to change, and not only change, but you started to win, and now there's more focused, and people started to recognize what that team was all about, and more importantly, what this community was all about, and what Pittsburgh had to offer, and what a great city it always was, but it turned out to be, just because of sports. And the Pirates started to win during that period of time, and so it became very magical for the growth of Pittsburgh and their sports franchises to have that success. Put the Penguins in there in the latter part of the 70s. Now we've got a city of champions that we were blessed to have as a label. And people who had to leave because of jobs, because of the closure of the steel mills, et cetera, left the city, but they didn't leave their teams. And now one of the greatest fan bases that we have, at least in football, is all over this country. And a lot of times it's like a home game for us to go play some places. And so it's just a wonderful, wonderful memories that we have. And being here and looking at, what you have down here in your room just, emphasizes what those memories are about sports and specifically. Or when we talk about the Packers, but it's also you get the Steelers and those names that changed the landscape of what sports are all about. And they shouldn't be forgotten of how this game has changed and the impact that it has on lives, communities, and then thereafter. And so, I was so very lucky to be able to be here, to be able to enjoy all that and be a part of that great success. But it wasn't always that way, as we remember. I have to tell you this quick story, is that when I first got here to Pittsburgh, I'd never been in Pittsburgh. Well, I should say this. I had, with the University of Notre Dame. We played Pitt my sophomore year and my senior year. But you fly in, you don't see anything. And I can remember, I forgot that. It was my senior year, and we're playing Pitt here, and we're staying at the old Hilton Hotel down at the Point, now the Wyndham. But and so it was the night before the game, and usually the team went out. They went to a movie to occupy time, except if you're a senior, you didn't have to go. And I decided I was not going to go. And I thought, let me go take a look, walk around this town. I don't know, I've never, I don't remember my sophomore year, but anyway. So I can remember walking out of the Hilton, and I looked up across the river. I saw this hillside, whatever it was called, an Alcoa sign that was blinking off and on up on the side of the hill. And I took a walk, and I went down Liberty Avenue, looking at all the buildings, made a turn, came up Penn Avenue as I was walking around the neighborhood. And I thought to myself, who in the hell would ever want to live here? And who knew that I'd be here for the next 50-some years? But anyway, that was kind of the opinion that people had outside of the natives that lived here. And so
yeah, but moving from Green Bay to here is like moving to Florida to us for the winter. The winters here are so nice compared to the winters in Green Bay.
Yeah, well, that's true. And you're right. And the fact was that growing up in Green Bay, growing up in that area, growing up in Appleton, is that you didn't know any different.
That's it. You didn't know any better.
You didn't know any different. Okay, so it snows in October, and it snows, and okay, fine. That was just until April.
I would get up as a kid, and it would be like 32 below zero. We would pray it would get up to zero during the day.
That's right.
What a difference.
But it was, and so you just you just got used to that difference. And of course, when you come here, and we complain about the weather, but it's not that bad.
Well, the one thing I remember about your family bar, and this is about the only thing I remember, we would go for Friday night fish fries. And when we would open the door, the only thing I remember is all this cloud of gray smoke coming out as the cigar smoke, the cigarette smoke, the pipe smoke, everything would hit us in the face. Yeah, that's about the only thing I remember. But it was a very original name for the bar. It was called Bleier's Bar.
That's right. It was very original. So Dad had it, and it was right across the street from the brewery. The brewery Adlerbrow beer was Appleton beer was right across the street. St. Joe's Catholic Church, which I went to grade school, and my father had gone to grade school was just a block down on the left-hand side. And the bar business was a unique business, and I feel so very fortunate maybe to have grown up in that business only because of the people that that you'd run into or you see, and it was just a part of your life. Ultimately, Friday night fish fries became a hit. Was very popular only because of the fact that you couldn't eat meat on Fridays, and so Appleton's very religious, and then it just became for everybody Friday night fish fries. It was just wherever you go, and everybody would have them, and it was perch usually, caught up in the Green Bay area and so on, and so that was. So some great memories of just that. And then I'd work. Then we served on Saturdays as well. So Friday night was one night, and then Saturdays as they expanded their business. Then they opened up on Wednesday. They had Saturday. They had chicken and a steak. And then Wednesday maybe Wednesday they had steaks. They had ribs and chicken and ribs on Saturday, and then they opened up Sunday. It was kind of a combination of everything else. But and I'd work the tables, and I would be a busboy, and I do the dishes in the kitchen, and so it was.
Well, you lived in the back.
Well, that's right.
And you had bedrooms upstairs.
So we had to. You just kind of understand. In the beginning of that, it was a long, elongated building. So it was almost like a hotel. So there were rooms upstairs. 1, 2, 4, 6, 8. There were 8 rooms. We had 8 rooms upstairs that were rented, and then the bar, and then right behind the bar was a living quarters for the owners. So there was a kitchen, there was a sitting room, and there was a bedroom, and that was that. And so that's where Mom and Dad lived until the kids started coming along. Then we moved upstairs and took the front part of the building, put a couple bedrooms in there, but we still had roomers. And I grew up early part of my career with 4 guys that lived upstairs, and so it was just a part of life until I think I was probably 11 years old, and the parents decided to remodel the bar and open it up, and we put an apartment upstairs, and so we moved the roomers but anyway, it was an interesting experience, and you just get used to it because that was just the norm, and so there was always somebody around, and people would go, how could you live like that? You didn't know any difference, and so that was it. And then we had another building just attached to it, which also was a rooming building, and and I tell people, the interesting thing was that there was a jukebox. All those bars had jukeboxes at that time, and I tell people more often than not, the jukebox was a godsend because it paid a lot of times. It helped pay the monthly mortgage at a nickel a song. So it would get anyway. So it's just different experiences.
Yeah. Oh, well. A lot of people outside of Appleton, and I'm sure some in Appleton right now, don't even remember or know about this, but you had one shoe bronzed. And that was a football thing that took place.
Right.
So I believe it's still on display at the high school.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So then we, say, and it was a promotion by one of the manufacturing, I think, companies, one of the shoe companies, in which, and there was an award, and you got a chance to take your shoe, and or they would ask for your shoe to get it bronzed because of of your playing ability or whatever it is, and so you get a bronze.
Yeah, it was a play that took place where you kept your left foot in bounds.
Well, maybe that was it. So we were playing Premontre, which was the big opponent in the league at that time, out of Green Bay, and they dominated all the time. It was the big Catholic school in Green Bay, and so we were playing them my sophomore year, and it was a big game. It was a big game, and so and it was a tightly fought game. And so we got the ball back and we drove it down the field. And so it was a quick pitch, basically around the right side for me. And I was going down the right side, and one of the defenders came over to make the tackle. Well, he didn't make the tackle. He pushed me out of bounds, or tried to push me out of bounds. And so the photographer caught this picture where he did, and I was trying to keep my balance, and the line was right here, and my left foot was just inside the line, or in the field, and my body's over the line this way, and I keep my balance, and I come back and go in and score, and then take the lead. And anyways, so for that picture, they had that picture, and so I get a bronze shoe.
Yeah. You had mentioned the 50-year anniversary of the Immaculate Reception.
Yeah.
And they're in the process of retiring Franco Harris's jersey.
Which is, I think, it's so apropos. The Steelers have only retired, well, this will be the third jersey. And they don't necessarily retire jerseys. It's not part of their scheme of things. They'll pay honor to those stars, or to those people that had played. And what they would do is that they would not give out that number, during the regular season. And so I put it in the context like this, which is that, you come in and let's just say you're a young quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they picked you up as a free agent or later draft choice. And you come to training camp, and they give you number 12, which is Bradshaw's number.
Right.
Don't think you're going to make this team, okay? I mean, don't think that you should be honored to get number 12. It's just an indication that they don't think much of you, and they got to give you a number to be in the camp. So, yeah. I mean, that's what they would do in the past. So to have Franco's number retired, and I think it's so apropos because of the impact that players have. They got Joe Green, impact, player, and changed the course of the defense and how it was played during that period of time. And so Franco, in his rookie year, coming from Penn State, taking us to the playoffs, and then having that play develop, being at the right place, right time, whatever and however you say it, but changed the course and direction. And I believe that, as we talked about it earlier, of that team. We won that game, and it was like the football gods finally changed, and we finally won a big game. And not only that, then it's not just one play, but it's the consistency of his play over his career and the impact that he had. A 1,000-yard rusher annually. The impact of what he had in it. And so, you talk about any one person, yes, he did, from his rookie year until, he retired. That was, and so it should be. And so and just to be a part of that backfield and be part of that success and being his running mate in the latter part of the 70s, I feel so very honored, just that is the case, and so so we're very happy. I'm pleased because it's much deserved.
Yeah, well, I have a couple burning questions about the Immaculate Reception.
That's right.
Everybody's always asking about, did the ball cut the ground or not? That's not my question.
Right.
My question is, where the heck were you on that play?
That's right. You know, and I tell people this is that it's, you know, and it is that, you know, over the years, and over the years, and the people that you've saw, the number of people that have made, at least mentioned to me, that they saw the Immaculate Reception, I think is just hovering around 200,000 now over these years that people were actually in that stadium to watch that game and so on. And I said, well, no, that's you did not see it. Oh, I was there. I saw it. And I said, bull, you didn't see it. I said, well, how do you say that? Well, I said, it's just human nature. Let's put things in the right. It's just human nature. Okay, let's just say you're on the parkway. It's a cold December, snowy, sleety afternoon, and you're driving down the parkway. Maybe you're going a little too fast and you don't see it, but there's an ice patch. And you hit the ice patch, and all of a sudden you lose control of your car, and you're going off to the bank, off to the side, down the hill, and you're going and you're running right into a tree. It's right there. You see a tree. Do you go, oh my goodness, I'm going to hit this tree? No, you go, oh my God, I can't stand it. That's what happened at the Immaculate Reception. So you saw him drop back. You saw Bradshaw throw the ball. You saw the collision. Ball goes up, and you go, oh, shit. What happened? He caught the ball. No, he didn't. Yeah, so I see it on the replay. Oh, you know, and then, yeah, I was there. I saw it. Yeah, you're lying.
I thought you were going to say you were used as a decoy.
But no, I wasn't even. So here's the sideline, and the reason I say that because I'm on the field. I'm on the sideline. I'm up. I'm on the sidelines watching that take place. I'm probably on the 40-yard line, looking down, you know, and I see Bradshaw drop back, and I said to myself, "Oh, I can't watch this," and I turned my back. Until I heard the crowd. I said, well, what happened? He scored. What do you mean he scored? so I'm kind of jogging down. People say, oh, yeah, we won the game. I go, oh. But the interesting thing here, and I just say this, so if you ever see the play replayed now on YouTube or whatever it is, and you'll see this. And so you'll see Franco catching the ball, then you'll see him going in, then they cut, you know, then he's in the end zone, and, you know, and the guys are jumping all over him. Then they cut. They go to the official, and he's raising his hands. Then they come back, and then you see number 20 take over the screen as he's running into the pile-up. So I made it.
Yeah.
So it's all right being last.
I was wondering how many times the week before you practiced that play.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, I know. Well, here, and I'm going to tell you this in all honesty. And one of the interesting things about this is habits. You know, you run and you do habits. And one of the interesting things is, now here's Franco. So Franco's coming in. And I can remember my first impression of Franco because he was at the college all-star game. So he didn't come into camp until 2 weeks after the rest of us had been in camp. And so here's the number 1 pick, the running back from Penn State. I didn't know who he was. But anyway, so now he's coming. So I see this. I see Franco running the ball. Now, when you don't have much talent, you know, and you're slow, you know, the fastest way between 2 points is a direct line between A and B. You just go from A to B. Okay, that's what the coaches want you to do. And you hit it as fast as you possibly can. Now I see this big guy, you know, coming up to the line, and he's dancing around, and then he's kind of picking spots, and he's going like, okay, then he's running over here. And I thought, no, you got to hit the hole. I'm saying to myself, you're not going to make it. You got to hit the hole. You got to hit it fast. And so at one time we had a discussion about that, and he said, you know, so the reason is that, you know, you never know where the hole's going to be. It might not be that 2 hole. It might be the 2.5 hole, or might be on the 4 hole. And so you got to kind of help pick that up. And so that was it. That was one thought. The second thought was that after every time he carried the ball, he would run 40 yards downfield. Every time, 40 yards downfield. Every time, 40 yards downfield. Now, practices went longer and longer because we had to wait for him to get back. But anyway, every time. But all of a sudden, this becomes a habit. The other thought process is this, is that you're taught, is that you go to where the ball is, no matter what. You go to where the ball is. So wherever the ball might be thrown, because you never know what's going to happen, you break on the ball. So the combination of, one, being impressionable still as a rookie and so on, work ethic that he had, of running 40 yards downfield, and that thought process of, you break to the ball no matter what it is that he's in a position to catch the ball. He's in the position to catch the ball, and he's on his way doing what was needed to be done. You become a little older, or so on, and so you have a tendency to go, well, the game, and it's over with, and I don't follow the little habits that we're taught. But he did, and he was there at the right time, in that ball. So, does it make any difference whether it hit the ground on television? It was so close. No, I didn't. Did it hit Tatum? Did it hit Frenchie as a rebound? You can take a look at it in Chuck Noll. In Chuck Noll's terminology, he had studied the trajectory coming backwards, and he declared that the way the ball was going or ejected coming back had to hit Jack Tatum, because the rule at that time, it had to hit a defensive player before another offensive player could catch it. So we have no question, everybody else. Now, it would be interesting if that play happened today, with the 10,000 cameras and every angle that's covered, and, to see what had taken place. But I know that it doesn't make any difference. It would stood up, and sometimes I think, we rely too much on cameras and angles and and this stuff, and it's a human game. Things happen. Let the officials make from their point of view. They see it, whatever it is, so that if we need to, we can argue about it for the rest of our lives thereafter.
Well, and a couple games into the season, when you first got to the Steelers, you got a letter.
Yeah.
And it was a famous letter from Uncle Sam.
That's right.
Saying that you've been drafted and you went off to Vietnam.
Yeah.
And most people know that you were injured in Vietnam. But the struggle you had coming back, a lot of the docs and whatever told you may never walk again.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to run again and whatever. And you were able to fight through all of that and keep a positive attitude and keep moving.
Well, part of it is a learned process. People, the docs, not that I wouldn't walk. They didn't go that far, but that it would be difficult, maybe because of the injuries that I sustained, the nerve damage that I had, and some of the ligaments damage that I had, that you wouldn't be able to play. But it's kind of a learned lesson, or at least from my point of view, is that depends on how badly you want to get back to doing something, whatever it is in your life. And then secondly, as a, I should say this, and it's not as an athlete, it's as a kid growing up. Whether you become an athlete or don't come in, you're playing. You play in the neighborhood, as I was talking about. You play organized games. Along the way, you have injuries. You stub your toe, or you sprain your ankle, or you twist your knee, or you pull a hamstring. And so what do you learn, kind of? And there's a process, and you kind of learn, well, it hurts, and then secondly, we go to mom, and then you maybe have to go see a doctor, and then you do some rehab, whatever that is at that time, and it heals, and you're back out playing the following week, in organized sports. So in this case, it was kind of the same thing. All right, well, I got damaged, I got hit a couple times. The fact was, I didn't lose a limb, I didn't lose a foot, I didn't lose an arm. damaged. Hey, but we've had that before. So you go through the process. The process may be long, but you got to wait till it heals. You see a doctor, you go through the operations, you see what it heals. But the driving force is, what do you really want to do? So playing was very important to me. Coming back to make the Steelers was very important, very focal. I wanted it. For whatever reason, subconsciously, maybe it was my identity at that time, and you make yourself a name for that. But I suppose the other thing is that I ultimately wanted to erase all the ifs that we carry in our lives. If I would have done this, if I would have done that, if I had worked hard, if I would have made this decision, where would my life be, and so on. As best possibly could, I would like to have, erased those ifs. So I didn't want to get to a point, and I did not get a chance or did not make it, to look back and say, oh, maybe you should have ran more, maybe you should have lifted more, maybe you should have done this more, maybe you should have done these other things. And so and if it didn't work out, I'd probably be sad, but I didn't want to get to the point where I'd say, okay, fine, what if? And so I try to do that. Now, along this path that I'm taking, is that you have to have opportunities or provide opportunities. And with the Steeler family, specifically, and the Rooneys and Mr. Rooney, there's two things that were kind of instrumental, and one was I was in Tokyo, and I had asked my physician whether or not I could play this game of football. And his response is, he chuckled, he said, don't worry about it, you'll have a normal life, don't expect to get back and be able to play, you just won't have the strength or flexibility to do the things that are necessary to be a running back in the NFL. Well, it kind of sucked that hope right out. 2 days later, I got a postcard in the mail. Simple postcard, had 2 lines, said, Rock, team's not doing well. We need you. Art Rooney. Oh, somebody needed me. Well, they didn't need me. Somebody took the time to care. Well, being the family that they are, and so I wrote them back, and I said, I'd like to be able to come to training camp. And this was in 1970. And he said, okay, fine, let me talk to Dan, and we'll see what happens. And so I came back to training camp in 1970. And training camp took a beating, but they kept me all through the whole training camp. And when the last cut came, they released me. And I went in to see Chuck Noll, and Chuck said, go home, do what's necessary, and come back next year. We'll see where you are. It crushed my expectation, but I talked to, anyway, the next morning I got a call from Dan Rooney. And Dan said, I'm sorry I wasn't there yesterday. I said, I talked to Chuck, and we're not going to take any of his room, but we're going to put you on injured reserve. We think another operation would help you. And so they did. They put me on injured reserve. And they paid me a salary to do so. So they bought me a year. Mm-hmm. And I came back the following year into training camp again. And ultimately, I made the taxi squad. I pulled a hamstring a couple weeks before the end of training, and I made the developmental squad, or the taxi squad. So they bought me 2 years to heal and get bigger and stronger and give me an opportunity. So now you got to do something with that. And so in 1973, I came back. And so I came back, and I weighed 218 pounds. I bench pressed 465 pounds. I squatted 600 pounds. As I tell people, I said I had 18.5-inch biceps. And how come I knew that? Because I measured them myself. But I had worked, and I came back. And I increased my speed. I mean, in the off season, in those other off seasons. In 1972, just to put this in perspective, is that we got our first stretching coach that the Steelers ever had. No one ever had a stretching coach. By 1973, we had our first weightlifting coach. And so we had, we had a program to maintain strength during the regular part of the season. And so it was, after the stretching coach, I had called him, I said I needed to increase. How do you increase your speed? I mean, just I needed to get a little quicker, or at least in my mind. Not that the 40 times were essentials, unlike today. I mean, we ran the 40, and so anyway. So my normal 40 might have been like 4.8, 4.7, around there. But anyway, so I come back, and I'm that size and speed, and I run the 40 in 4.5, and 4.55, and 4.6. And so they saw this. So they saw this expansion. They saw this commitment, and getting bigger, stronger, and faster. And so so I made the team in '73, and I got to carry the ball once during that whole season. And part of the story that's interesting, part of the story is that, you go through this process, as we were talking in this process from 1968 to 1973. It's a five-year journey. It doesn't sound like much, but when you're living through it, it's 5 years. And I'm back, playing special teams. And to make the team in '73, I was going to have to fight with every, free agent, draft choice, and rookie again. To do so, and I made it, okay, and played special teams. 1974 coming back, same process. I'm thinking, okay, fine, to make this team again. And I thought, really, after the 1973 season, I thought, where's your life going? To make the team again, I was going to have to fight with every free agent, draft choice, and rookie again to try to make the team. I thought maybe my life's going in another direction. I did come back. I did make the team. I got a chance to play. Maybe not to the level I thought, but hey, that wasn't part of the deal I made in the rice paddies. And so after the '73 season, I left the Steelers to find my life's work. I was living in Chicago, and I was selling life insurance. I was not going to go back. When, out of the blue, I get a call from Andy Russell. And Andy is coming into Chicago. Big sports dinner, sponsored by the NFL, Boys and Girls Club. Guys are coming from all over the league. Join me. Hadn't seen you since the end of the season. It'd be great to get together again. Well, I'm not going back. I said, well, thanks. I declined. He pushed. I declined. He pushed. I declined some more. And then he asked me why. And before I could blurt anything out, I said, well, I quit. I'm not going back. He said, well, you can't quit. He said, if you quit, what you've already done is you've already made a decision for the coaching staff. Do you like them well enough to make decisions for them? He said, well, your responsibility. This is what you want to do, is that you come back and you make them make a decision. You back them in the corner. You give them every reason to either keep you or release you. But you don't cut yourself. The reality of this game is that we're all expendable. The reality of this game is we all can be cut at any time. But if this is what you want, you don't cut yourself. Maybe it was just the arm twisting I needed, and I went back. And everything I had perceived to take place. And I had to fight with every free agent, draft choice, and rookie to make the team. Leading ground gainer during the exhibition season. Thank you very much. Now, the reason that I was a leading ground gainer over those past 3 years during the exhibition season was the simple fact that I carried the ball more than anybody else during that period of time. I played more than anybody else during that period of time. Given those two simple statistics, I better be the leading ground gainer, because all they were providing for me was what? An opportunity to be able to make the team, and they had to keep me. It's the beginning of the season, 1974. I was the 5th running back out of 4, back playing special teams. When, unbeknownst to me, or us, Franco Harris gets hurt in the first game. Frenchie Fuqua becomes the starter, and I become the backup to the backup, which I hadn't been before. So with renewed vigor, that first game, second game, third game, fourth game, right before the half, the backup, Frenchie, gets hurt. I'm inserted the game at fullback. Now, Preston Pearson, remember Preston Pearson? Finished his career with the Dallas Cowboys. But right before the half, he breaks one 43 yards down the sideline. He scores, gives us a lead. We go into halftime. We go over assignments, adjustments. Who's going to start the second half? Maybe those guys that got you the lead in the first half, and we get to start the second half. And as a team, we win that game. Following week, everybody's still banged up, so as Preston and I get to start. And as a team, we win that game. And the week thereafter, it's a Monday night game, an extra day of healing. Franco is now healthy. But that's okay. At least I got a chance to play and show him, prove what I could do. And we had a pregame meal. Afterwards, we got a breakout group. Dick Holtz, our backfield coach, he gives us the first 3 plays of the game. And then he looks around and he says, okay, Franco, you and Rock will start tonight. And momentarily I said, quite confused. I didn't know how we both could play the same position at the same time. When it dawned on me, I was going to play the fullback position and could play the other running back position. Nobody told me that. I wish I would have been better prepared. But we get to start that game. And we win that game. So we get to start the following week. And we win that game. And we start the remaining part of that season. Bradshaw, Franco, and myself. And we win the division. We go to the playoffs. We go to the Super Bowl. And we win the Super Bowl for the first time. And we play 6 more years together. Win 3 more Super Bowls. And in 1976, Franco and I become the second set of running backs in the history of the NFL, each to gain 1,000 yards rushing in one season. And after 12 years, I retire. Now, the reason I got a chance to play, and this becomes the point, wasn't because of my size and speed, 2 things as I've told you I do not possess, but ultimately because of one talent. Prior to that breakout group, unbeknownst to me, Chuck Noll come up to Dick Hoke and said, you have a weakness in your backfield. Who is your best blocker? He said, Bleier. He said, then start him. One talent. And all of a sudden, that fine line of one that connects our lives, for me, came full circle. So, really, as we go through lives, it's really a determination of what you want to accomplish and what becomes important in your life, no matter what it might be, and where you're going to put your energy. And I think along the way, you make your own breaks, or breaks happen, or things happen to good people. And so I get a chance to play those years and have all those memories and those friendships.
Okay. So what I want to do is I want to plug your book called Fighting Back.
Yeah.
And this is your life story from being in Appleton as a child,
That's right.
all the way through the Steelers to Super Bowls and whatever.
Yeah.
It's a very good book. And I know you use proceeds to go toward a program. And he also, every once in a while, will go out and perform in something called The Play. And I got to see this. It was at Heinz Hall in Pittsburgh, opening night.
Right.
You got to play yourself. Was that hard to do?
It was hard to do, that's right.
But he's on stage for an hour and a half by himself, just talking about his life story. The backdrop has the Bleier bar, and he does an excellent job. And I have season tickets to the Green Bay Packers, so we were going out to a Packer game a few years later, and I found out he was doing The Play at his old high school in Appleton.
That's right.
So I bought tickets again, and my wife and I went to see The Play the second time.
Right.
It's really an excellent play. If you get a chance, you got to see it if it comes to your area.
Yeah, that's right.
And then I got him to sign a Steeler football with his 4 Super Bowls, his Bronze Star, his Purple Heart when he was through Vietnam. So you will hear all this stuff either in the play or you will read about it in his book. Thank you.
You're welcome.